Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here, and in this particular video you are going to see 6 full episodes and a lot of new sewing makes as well from Sew Easy Season 1, which is an ongoing series on my channel. Now putting these all together in one video, I hope that it's going to make it a little bit easier for you to find them, but also with some of the new sewing makes, I wanted to take this time to encourage you to use the information that we've discussed in these episodes time and time again, build on top of that, because we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. We can take one idea and we can replicate it, we can look beyond what we see and we can reimagine it, which is basically the entire idea and the entire focus behind the series. Now in the first episode you are going to see 2 boho cardigans that I made for my friend. They're super fun, very colorful. I made them out of chiffon, which is perfect for summertime. But since right now, as of this very recording, we are heading into colder months, you can also use exactly the same principle to make something that would be appropriate for fall and winter time. Choose a knit that is a little bit thicker with nice drape, and ta-da! That's what I mean about looking beyond what you see and using the ideas over and over again just by changing a couple of details. Another great thing about this project is that it comes together super quickly and basically consists out of simple shapes, and all of the measurements I took from a ready-wear cardigan that my friend gave me so that way I could copy and replicate it. So now let's take a look at the entire process. The size of this ready-to-wear cardigan is large to extra large, and we're going to be using this exact sizing, but I want to put it on myself so that way you can see that it is really easy to make one. Want to make it longer, make it longer. Want to make it wider, make it wider. It only has a couple of seams. It's really easy to wear. You will most probably see something like this during summertime. It has this sort of like bohemian vibe, but the main idea here is that you want to choose fabric with the drape. So you can use something a little bit thicker as an overlay for winter, but it has to drape really nicely. Otherwise you're just gonna look like a big square block. I have these 2 chiffon fabrics that have been asking to become something beautiful for a while now. Look at this print. Isn't it fun? And then I have another one that is also equally as beautiful. Look at that. Okay, I'm going to measure this real quick and then I'm going to give you the action plan. Basically, it's just a really large rectangle, which makes it really easy. The total length is 66 inches, the front is 33, the back is 33, and the width is altogether 40 inches. So first I'm going to cut my rectangle, which is 66 inches long and 40 inches wide. And I'm also going to tidy up all of the raw edges so that way they're nice and neat. Okay, that is done. This is the next thing that we're going to do. We're going to take our fabric, all right? This is how we would fold it if the shoulder seams are going to be right over here. So this is how it's gonna go on our body. So this is how we want to fold it in half. So we want to double check that the bottoms are even, all right, on one side and on the other side. There we go. I'm holding it by the side right now, by the side seam. Now I want to put it on the table like that, and I want to bring it in and fold it in half. For the neckline, I made this really easy drafting. It's 2.5 inches wide, 1 inch down, and then go ahead and connect it with a curved line just like you see it on your screen. I have cut this out and I'm going to place it like so at the center back. So this is center back and center fold. As you can see, there's no raw edges. This is folded. These folds right over here are going to be your shoulder seams, and these raw edges over here are going to be your side seams. And here I'm cutting through both layers. Once we have cut away the neckline, let's go ahead and lay this flat. Now is the time to decide which is going to be the front and the back. I have decided that this part is going to be my front, so here I only want to take 1 layer of fabric and I did pin it together so that way it wouldn't move. But from the very top of this corner over here, and this will work on chiffon and other lightweight fabrics, but you have to test your fabric first. I'm going to make a little cut like that because I'm going to rip it here. And I'm also going to do exactly the same thing here. Again, I pinned it so that way it wouldn't move. At the very top, I'm just taking a straight perpendicular line down just through one layer of fabric only because we don't want to cut the back. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and rip it on both sides. And this is what we have now. Looks familiar, right? This is where your head is gonna go, like that. All right, we're on to the hemming, and here I have to say that this is probably the most time-consuming part out of this entire project. And I also need you to know a couple of things. Number one, it will all depend on what kind of fabric you're working with, and number two, of course, it will depend on your skill level and on your pace of work. So for me, hemming one of these cardigans with a rolled hem or double fold hem is just about an hour worth of work. For you, it might be a little bit longer. But let's say you're working with a double brushed polyester knit, a fabric that once you cut it, it doesn't fray, it doesn't unravel, and in this case you might just want to cut it accurately and neatly and leave it as is. I'm not saying you should do that, I'm just saying that it's one of the options depending on what material you're working with. Now here I'm working with chiffon, so my choice is going to be sort of like a hybrid between a double fold and a rolled hem. I'm going to be doing that on a sewing machine just with a regular presser foot, and it's pretty easy and straightforward. And there's at least 5 different other ways how you can hem it depending on the fabric that you're working with. So I will leave them for you guys in the info box below so that way you can take a look and choose the right one for you. So what I do here is really straightforward. This is the cut edge of my project. I'm going to fold it in once by about 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to fold it in another time, and that's how it's going to go underneath the presser foot of my sewing machine. And I'm going to stitch on the folded edge that's away from the edge of the fabric, and that's about it. When I start on the very edge, I don't backstitch, so that way my sewing machine doesn't chew up my fabric, especially when I'm working with something lightweight like that. And I also don't pin it in place because it's just really easy to roll it like that. You will notice that I'm holding fabric here with my other hand, and it might look like I'm pulling on it, but actually I'm using this as sort of my steering wheel, so that way it's really easy for me to get that really nice and straight stitch. Here's an extra tip. If you're having a really hard time getting that stitch nice and even at the very beginning because your sewing machine likes to chew up your fabric, first of all, of course, check the needle, that your needle is not dull and that you're using appropriate needle for appropriate fabric. But if you're still having some troubles, a little piece of tissue paper might help. Just place it as sort of like your starter underneath your project as you start sewing. After that, you can just tear it away, and that's it. Alright, once the hem is done, we are on the last and final step. What we want to do is we want to take the bottom hem, the front and the back, and we want to match them. And then we want to make sure that we have a matching shoulder seam right over here. So here is the fold, here are the 2 cut hems. And from the shoulder, so this is going to be like this, right? So from the shoulder down, we want to measure approximately 10 inches. So 10 inches down, and it's going to look like so. So we're measuring 10 inches down, and then we want to measure about 2 inches in, make a little mark, and then from there 2 inches down from that point, and those 2 inches are going to be that little straight seam or a zigzag seam depending on what type of fabric you're using, that is going to sort of hold the sleeve opening in place. You're going to repeat that on both sides, so make sure that they're symmetrical and the seams match. And here, just because I'm going to be using black thread, because that's what I was using for hemming, I'm actually going to scoot a little bit deeper than 2 inches, so that way my seam ends up within these other black designs, so that way it's just concealed and not as visible. And also, here's an extra tip. If your fabric allows it, and mine is a little bit too lightweight and see-through for that, I would cut a little strip of of medium weight interfacing, and I would interface that spot where you're going to be doing that stitch, so that way you know for sure it's nice and secure, because if anything, if you tug on anything, that seam is going to be under a lot of stress. And in my case, you know what I think I might be doing? I might do 2 seams just about 1/4 of an inch apart from each other, so that way the pressure is distributed in case if anything happens. Well, obviously these are from my friend, but I wanted to put them on so that way you can see the flow of the fabric, you can see how it fits on my size, and basically that's all there is to it. And as promised, a really quick and easy project. And I wanted to add 2 more things to this. Number 1, this could be a really great project for a gift because it's sort of like a one size fits all. It comes together quickly, yet you can still make it beautiful. You can make it handmade, but you don't have to spend like a week making it happen. Number 2, if you have some beautiful blankets that you don't use, but you would like to do something with them, this could be a great material for upcycling and turning it into this sort of cardigan. All right, moving on. I wanted to share with you a little set, which is the latest sewing make that I made based on episode number 2 of Sew Easy. As you can see, this set consists from shorts and a shirt, and both of them are wardrobe essentials. Now we're going to be working on the top, and in order to make a pattern, we're actually going to trace a ready-to-wear shirt that we already have. So the first thing that I start with is my tracing paper. You can also use old newspaper, gift wrapping paper, my ruler, and my pencil, and of course, the garment as well. Now here you have 2 options. You can trace it with a right side out or with the wrong side out, meaning with all the seams exposed. And I've done quite a few videos on tracing your pants and tracing your t-shirt with a sudden sleeve like this one. So I'm pretty sure I do something different in every situation. But right now I'm going to trace it with the right side out, and I'll tell you why. Because then I'm tracing without seam allowances. And as you know, I add my seam allowances as I cut my fabric. So if you want to trace this with your seam allowances already including, then trace it with the wrong side out. And here I want to fold it very neatly, making sure that the shoulder seams align on the seam and that the side seams align as well, and also the center front and center back are even. Here on the top, I will go ahead and do a shoulder seam, which is going to start right here at the base of the neckline, and I'm not counting the actual ribbing of the neckline, and it's going to end right over here where the sleeve is ending. And I'm just going to go ahead and connect them too. Here on the neckline, I'm going to mark 2 points. One is where the front neckline starts. Again, I'm not counting the ribbing. And the other one is going to be where the back neckline starts. And again, I'm not counting the ribbing. Now I'm going to remove the shirt, and with a really nice curved line, I'm going to connect and create the back neckline. And I'm going to do exactly the same for the front neckline as well. Here, you want to make sure that it is a 90-degree angle over here. Sometimes I'll do a little box like that, so that way it is easier to get that really nice smooth curved line. So you can do that as well. You will see me do that in quite a few of my detail tutorials. So if you've been with me for a while, you know that this is an option. There we go. And as you have noticed, I am drafting the front and the back pattern piece all in one, so that way it is so much easier. And here on the sleeve, we have a rolled cuff over here, so it's kind of, it looks a little bit messy. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the edge of the shoulder over here and the edge of the underarm with a straight line. And that's it. Our pattern is ready. Now here I want to say that for me, this is a very straightforward garment, loose fit as well. So folding it in half like this and tracing it will work just fine. Even if I do some minor discrepancies between what I trace and what is the actual garment, we're probably not going to see them. Now for you, it might be a different story depending on what garment you're tracing, what is the fabric that you're working with, what is the style, design, and so many other things. So as always, adjust according to your own personal set of circumstances. And this is what it looks like. If I hold it up, it was really straightforward and easy, wasn't it? So this is the back, this is the front, this is center front and center back. Also, this is going to be the grain line of your garment. Don't forget to mark the direction of the stretch if you are working with knit fabrics. And I know that not everybody has a grown-on sleeve t-shirt to trace in your closet. So if you have just a regular sit-in sleeve, let me show you how I go about tracing and turning this into grown-on sleeve t-shirt. So for the first step, everything is exactly the same. I fold my t-shirt in half, nice and neat, align the shoulder seams, also the center front and the side seams as well. Now here from the edge of the neckline, I go ahead and I take a straight line all the way to the edge of the sleeve, but I usually lift it up just by a little bit, let's say half an inch. You can also lift it up by a lot more than that. And then I take a straight line. Then from here, we're going to take a straight perpendicular line down. However, I also want to lower the underside just for a little bit. So here's our side seam, and I'm going to curve it in a little bit lower than what it usually would be. There we go. And as you saw from the previous example, I just go ahead and take a straight line down like so. So when we remove it, we have a beautiful grown-on sleeve. As you can see, they're nearly identical, obviously two different sizes. The curve over here is a little bit more pronounced than it is over here, but also the sleeve here is a little bit longer. So don't be afraid to change up anything that you want to change up. At this point, you are your own designer, so embrace it. All right? And now let's put this all together. As you can see here, I'm cutting my seam allowances or adding my seam allowances as I'm cutting my fabric. Same goes for the hem allowances on the sleeves and on the bottom of the shirt as well. So please be mindful of that. Now, although I did have just one pattern piece, I'm cutting both the front and the back as is, and then I'm adjusting the front pattern piece and I'm just cutting the neckline a little bit deeper. Now, as you know, everything that I make in my videos for you guys is also everything that I actually wear in my day-to-day life. So being practical, but also being intentional and thoughtful about what I make is pretty important to me. Now, I'm not a fancy person at all. Usually I sleep in like my old t-shirts, but they are they are on the last leg. So I thought this would be a great project to make pajamas. So each yard of these fabrics actually gave me one top that we're working on today, and also one of these shorts to make a really cute pajama set. And one yard was actually wider than the other, so from this floral one, I managed to cut a little t-shirt for my daughter, just a tad bigger than what she is right now. But I also wanted to jazz it up a little bit, so what I did is I took the pattern, made it a little bit shorter, so cut off a little bit, and then from the fabric that I had left over, I had a long enough strip of fabric to cut as a peplum, so that way I can gather it up and attach it to the bottom of the shirt to make it a little bit more fun. Very briefly on the construction, because it really is straightforward, and I do have detailed videos on how to make this if you're sewing this in woven or if you're sewing this in knit. But usually it goes like this. You start with your shoulder seams, then you can opt to complete your neckline, then you move on to the side seams, finish the hem of the sleeves, and then hem the entire garment. Now let me show you a couple of different things that I did here. On this purple top for my daughter, I finished both the neckline and the sleeves with a ribbing. Now on the same purple top for myself, I finished the neckline exactly the same way. However, I actually ran out of ribbing for the sleeves, and therefore I simply folded them under like I would on a single fold hem, and then I cover stitched them. Now you don't have to cover stitch, you can just use a simple zigzag stitch, and after that was done, I sewed the side seams and finished the hem. Now on this floral shirt, I actually started by sewing just only one shoulder seam. I finished the neckline with a different technique, and then I sewed the other shoulder seam. Finished the sleeves exactly the same way as I did for the neckline, and then completed the side seams and the hem. Now, once you're done with this project and with this pattern, keep it, don't toss it, because you can use it time and time again. For example, if you make it just a little bit longer, you can turn it into a tunic. If you want to turn it into a dress, you can just let it all go till the floor and you get a maxi dress, or you can cut it off at the waist and add a skirt. And of course, you can make it for yourself and for your little ones. Here's another example of a shirt that I made for my daughter, following the same principles in this video. Now, in episode number 3 of this series, we are going to be working on a gorgeous skirt. Very simple project, but it features a very interesting detail, which is this exposed elastic. Now, although we're going to be working on a skirt, as always, you can take the same principle and the same technique and you can apply it to other garments as well. So for example, you can use an exposed elastic in shorts, in pants, even in tops and outerwear. So here I have a couple of other garments with exposed elastic. I made this little skirt for my daughter. And just recently, these pants, this is part of a Jasmine's costume for Halloween, so that's what that is. And I completed the top with exposed elastic. Needless to say, you can also make this skirt with a regular elastic. So now let's take a look at all of the steps. Now, a lot of times when we're working with garments that are pull-on garments for the bottom part of our body, like pull-on shorts, pull-on pants, pull-on skirts, like the one that we're going to be making, we are working from hip up. That is in a situation where between the waist and the hip circumference is the largest measurement between those two, which is the exact case on my body as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the full circumference of my hips, and that is the measurement that we're going to be working with. Then you usually need your waist circumference as well, but I like to gauge that straight on the elastic because elastics can be different. Some stretch more, some stretch less, some are softer, and therefore you need to stretch them a little bit more in order to secure them nicely on your waist. So I like to do that, with elastic right away. Then of course we need the length of the skirt. So what I usually do is I place my elastic on my waist, I take measuring tape, I place it on the bottom of the elastic, and then I just drop it and I determine how long I want my skirt to be. And that is about all that you will need in order to get started. So the construction will start with a rectangle, where the top of the rectangle that's gonna go on your waist is going to be 1.5, 2 times, 2.5, even 3 times larger than your full hip circumference. Now that will depend on how full and gathered you want your skirt, and also on the type of the fabric that you're going to be using. If you're using something that's a little bit thicker, it will gather a little bit rougher. If you're using something like really lightweight silk or chiffon, that will gather like a charm, but you will also need to have a little bit of wider fabric in order to be able to create that fullness and volume because the fabric is so light. Now let me give you a full picture of what I'm working here with, so that way it's a little bit easier for you. Now I know a lot of you don't like math, but we have to use it in sewing, so what you gotta do? I'll try to make it really easy for you. So just to round it up, let's assume that the full circumference of my hips is 40 inches. It's a little bit less than that, but let's just round it up. So 40 inches this way. I also know that from the bottom of the elastic down, I want my skirt to be about 23 inches long. Now we also need to not to forget to add a little bit to the top of the skirt, where we're going to be gathering that and sewing into elastic, plus for the bottom of the skirt where we're going to be hemming it. So let's say we're going to add 2 inches to account for that. 23 plus 2 is going to be 25, which is the total length of my skirt. Now for the rectangle, I know that the width of my fabric this way on the cut side is 60 inches. Now I'm starting to think, okay, if I cut 2 rectangles for the front and for the back, each one of them is going to be 60 inches wide. That is going to make 120 inches altogether. That is going to be 3 times the width of my full hip circumference. I'm working here with pretty light silky polyester that I got from Joann's, and I think it will take that amount of gathering pretty well without a problem. So I'm going to straighten out my fabric over here, and I'm going to cut 2 rectangles. Each is going to be 25 inches long and 60 inches wide. Okay, so here you might be saying, hold on. Why are we using hip circumference as our base measurement and not the waist circumference, for example? And I have done both in multiple various videos, and from my perspective, for my experience, I'm here to tell you that it actually doesn't really matter. Multiplying your waist or hip circumference by 2 or 3 times is just a rule of thumb. What I found is that there are 2 major factors that you need to pay attention to. Number 1 is how many gathers and what fullness of the skirt you want. Therefore, sometimes multiplying by 2 or by 3 will actually give you that really nice full amount, and that skirt is going to look super nice and gathered. And number 2, in this particular situation where we are working with a pull-on garment and my hips are larger than my waist, and my waist is where this skirt is actually going to sit, I need to make sure that the skirt can go over the hips. And for the purpose of simplicity, that's why I'm taking hip circumference as our base measurement. For all I know, you can just go ahead and add 10 extra inches or 20 more centimeters to your full hip circumference, and you will have just a tiny bit of amount of gathers if that's what you're looking for. All right, one rectangle cut, another one is right here on the table. So the next thing for us is to actually start putting this all together. I'm going to place my rectangles at the short ends. For me, this is the short end. If you have a maxi skirt, then this probably is going to be the long one. So determine what is the side of each one of your rectangles, and I'm going to place them wrong sides together, and I'm going to make a French seam. Now you can use whatever technique you would like. You can do a straight stitch and a serged edged, or a zigzag edged, or anything else. As always, the So Easy videos in this series are encouraging you to put the knowledge that you already have together. If you need step-by-step tutorials for these techniques, I have those on my channel, and you can go and check them out in the info box below or on my channel page. All right, now we have 2 choices. Choice number 1 is to work flat, meaning that we leave it as is, we gather the skirt, then we attach it to the elastic flat, and then once all of that is done, we will sew the side seam and elastic all in one go. Option number 2 is to work in a round, meaning that right now we will go ahead and we will construct the second side seam, we will take elastic, we will sew the ends, and then we will attach the gathered skirt to already sewn elastic. Now you can choose whichever one you'd like. Working flat is easier when you're working with elastic and gathered fabric. However, in this case, because I do have 2 rectangles, I want each of the seams to be the side seam of the skirt and the seam of the elastic to be at the center back. So I will be working in the round. Now, if you are a member of this channel, first of all, thank you so much for your support. I truly appreciate you. And check out Members Extra for this week, because I'll show you how I complete exactly the same skirt, but with a flat method. Since I'm working in the round, I have completed the second side seam of my skirt as well. And now what I'm going to do is, I will take the top of my skirt, I will fold it into the right side of the fabric about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to stitch it down. You will see why I did that in just a few moments when we're going to be attaching the skirt to the elastic. Alright, now that I have finished the top, I'm going to gather it. And here you can go so many ways. You can adjust the tension on your sewing machine and gather that way. You can gather on your serger, and at least 2 or 3 other methods. I will go the simplest way, which is going to be using the longest straight stitch available on your sewing machine and doing 2 rows of stitching right underneath that little folded edge that we did on the top. And that is going to provide me a little bit more control in order to gather this much fabric, and it's going to make the gathers a little bit more even. Alright, 2 rows of gathering stitches are done. Now we have to gather, but the question is, gather how much and to what circumference? So let's think about it. We have established that the circumference of my hips is 40 inches. Now, I need at least 40 inches of width of this skirt in order to be able to pull it over my hips. Of course, we want to add a little bit of ease to it, so that way it's just comfortable, not just like, putting on there. So let's say 42 inches is the circumference to which I have to gather this skirt. Now I have 2 panels, the front and the back, side seam, so 42 divided by 2 is going to be 21. So I know that each side of this gathered skirt should equal to 21 inches. Now here, let's not forget about the elastic to which all of that is going to be attached. So in order for everything to go as planned, let's make sure that our elastic is stretchy enough. And as I mentioned, I don't usually measure my waist for this because elastics can be different. So all I do is I actually put elastic around my waist like this, and then I determine how tight I want it to feel on my waist. Of course, remember that there's going to be a little bit of thickness added due to all of that fabric being gathered right underneath the elastic. Now once you have determined, you can go ahead and mark it, but don't forget that you will need to add a little bit for seam allowance. So let's say we can do about an inch or so for seam allowance, so half an inch will be on each side, so that way we can fold it under nicely. Alright, I have my mark over here, I have my seam allowance mark over here, and what I want to do now is I want to take a measuring tape. I want to put the beginning of my measuring tape right over here, and I want to put my finger right over here on that mark, and I want to see if my elastic stretches comfortably to 42 inches because I will need to stretch it in order to attach that skirt to it. Now that that is double checked, I can go ahead and start gathering. I'm going to take these ends of the elastic, place one about half an inch below the other, like so, and I'm going to fold it in, and right over here I'm going to stitch with a zigzag stitch a couple of times, back and forth, so that way we create this sandwich. Once this is done, we're going to fold it down like so that way the raw edge of the elastic is enclosed, and we're going to stitch one more time with a zigzag stitch right on top of it so that everything is flat. Now if this is a little bit too thick for you, you can use a number of other techniques, including just the very simple one, placing the elastic right sides together, stitching it with a zigzag stitch, and calling it a day. So there's always more than one way to go about it. Just choose what works for you, what suits you, what you like in your garments. Now all I gotta do is to attach the elastic to the gathered skirt. For that, I will start by marking quarter waist on the elastic and on the skirt. That will ensure that my gathers are all distributed evenly, and it's easier that way to make it really nice and neat. Once that is done, I will align quarter marks on the elastic with quarter marks on a skirt. Now you will see that the elastic is shorter than the skirt itself, and that is by design. I will be stretching elastic as I'm going to sew it down. Now the skirt is placed underneath the elastic, and I will stitch it down with a zigzag stitch. It is easier if you do baste it in first, and it is kind of challenging to be basting elastic while stretching it, but you know, we must do what we must do. And if basting really provides you a good result, go ahead and do that first. After that, with a zigzag stitch, go ahead, align the presser foot with the edge of the elastic. This is what I do here, and zigzag all the way around. Once done, this is what you're going to have. On the right side, you will see a zigzag stitch, and on the wrong side, that zigzag stitch is going to catch all those gathers of the skirt. Now, I usually go ahead and remove the basting or gathering stitches, so that way they're just not in the way. And that's it! The skirt is done! So I think now you can understand why I did that little fold on the top of the skirt before we started gathering that. So that way you don't have a raw edge dangling right underneath the elastic. And the bottom of the skirt was finished with a simple, narrow double fold hem. I often say that just because a project is simple, it doesn't mean that it's boring, and it doesn't mean that it's not worthy. So I truly hope that this skirt was a good proof of that. Now let's move on to episode 4. Here we're going to be making some pants, and the original ones that I made in the video are these, super bright, super juicy, very summery, very fun, but If you're not a prints person, which I totally understand, this can be a little bit scary, and the color is bright too. So I totally understand if it sort of deters you from looking at the video or looking at the pattern. But as always, I would like to encourage you to look beyond what you see, because the same pattern can really transform in a different fabric. Here you see these blue pants made from exactly the same pattern that you will see in the video, and paired with white blouse for a classy combination. I've also used the same pattern to make shorts, and I truly hope that it will inspire you to use your patterns more than once as well. First, I'm actually going to start by picking up fabric for these pants, and I already have my pattern drafted, so I'm taking it with me to the store so that way I know exactly how much fabric I need to buy. But don't you worry, we will be talking about the steps on drafting these pants a little bit later. Now here I'm looking for simple cotton because I want really easy care instructions, I want these pants to be durable, and I want them to be really comfortable during hot summer weather. I wear a ton of bright clothing during summer, so juicy prints right away catch my eye, and I think one of these is probably going to be the winner. Now here I want to encourage you to keep your options open in terms of fabric, because here are the exactly same pants that we're going to be making, but instead of cotton, they're made in viscose, and you can see the drape is just beautiful. Alright, I have my fabric here. Let me show you the print before I put it in the washer. Look at that! How fun! Now I might dye it slightly yellow or slightly blue after the pants are complete, just to kind of fill in the white, but I'm gonna think about that. But for now, this is great. It's really nice and soft. Let's put it in the washer and let's get started on the pattern. Now, to make it really easy and really straightforward, and since you and I have already done all the heavy lifting for it, we're going to use a basic pants pattern as a starter for these palazzo pants. Now, these basic pants come from a video tutorial, very detailed. I show you how to measure yourself, how to place those measurements on a paper pattern, how to draft a crotch curve, how to do all of the other things to create a basic pants pattern that you can use after that for a lot of different design variations. And that's exactly what we're doing today. If you need a refresher, I will leave that detailed basic pants video for you guys in the description of this video. I'm going to get started with the back pattern piece first. Here's my basic pants pattern, and this is my palazzo pant pattern. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place one on top of another so that way you can see the difference and modifications, and I'll talk you through them. I have aligned my patterns here at the crotch and at the knee, and of course down the center of the leg as well. So the first thing that we see is that the new pants pattern is shorter on the top than the basic pants pattern, and that is because the basic pants go all the way to the waist without accounting for the waistband just yet. But since the palazzo pants will have the waistband, and I don't want to add 3 inches of waistband or 2 inches of waistband on top of the waist, that would make for extremely high-waisted pants. Of course, I went ahead and I took 3 inches down. So all you're going to do is, from the top of the pants over here, you're going to take 3 inches or 2 inches or however much lower you would like, 3 inches here and 3 inches here, because of course the top of the pants in the back isn't straight or perpendicular, it's on the angle. And once you have measured 3 inches all through, you're going to make a new line for the top of the pants. Then everything stays as is up until the crotch line. And please keep in mind here that the basic pants pattern that I'm working with already has 1/2 inch of ease for each pattern piece, which gives us 2 inches of ease all throughout the garment. Now here at the crotch line, I added 1/4 inch at the crotch curve and 1/4 inch at the crotch line over here on the side seam, so that way I can make a straight line from the waist or the new waistband all the way to the hem. Here at the knee, I decided to add 2 inches and 1/4 to each side to make for that really nice wide leg that I'm going for. That would of course adjust this part of the pattern as well, and as you can see, this inseam is slightly curved but basically almost straight in my case. And then I kept the width of the knee all throughout and until the hem. That's it, the back pattern piece is ready. Here for the front pattern piece, we're going to take 3 inches down just like we did for the back pattern piece, because of course the length of our side seam needs to match. Here at the crotch line, again, 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here, that's what I added for my pattern piece. And here at the knee, instead of adding 2 inches and a quarter, I added 1 inch and 3/4 of an inch. And then I just took a straight line down from crotch all the way to the hem, and a slightly curved line over here from crotch to the knee, and then a straight line all the way to the hem. As you saw, that was really easy and straightforward. All I did was to add a little bit of ease and then create the shape of the pant leg that I would like to see in my pants, which is basically just straight from hip all the way to the hemline. Now yours can be flared if you would like to. Yours can feature a ruffle on the bottom if that's what you're into. So definitely take a look at your designer ideas and make them come to life. And if you're not sure about what exactly you're doing, it's always wise to make a muslin or a sample. You can use an old bed sheet for that. That will save you a ton of nerves. And the last thing that I want to mention before I start cutting my fabric is that from hip up, so from hip all the way to the waistband, my pants pattern is also straight because I'm going to be doing a gathered waist. So if yours isn't, you do have to adjust for that, because with a pull-on pants, you have to make sure that you can pull the top part of the pants through your hips. Hold on, I forgot about the pockets. So I do have really detailed tutorials about different types of pockets and how to sew them, so you can definitely choose what you would like from those tutorials. But to give you a quick gist of what I'm doing over here is I actually want to create a really neat side seam pocket. I might be doing French seams on these pants, and I want to sort of conceal that pocket in that French seam. And as always, I judge the size of the pocket by my hand plus a little bit extra. You can judge the size of your pocket by phone, keys, or whatever else you want to carry in there. And I want the opening of my pocket to be about 2 inches from the top and to be about, let's say 5.5 inches over here. For the back pattern piece, my pocket is going to look like this. You can, of course, round the corners over here or do them straight, whichever way you prefer. My pocket is going to be 5.25 this way, 5.25 this way. And I like mine to be sort of like in the middle of the top part of my pants and about 2.25 inches down from the top. A quick reminder over here, don't forget to walk the seams of the front pattern piece and the back pattern piece to make sure that everything aligns when you're ready to sew. And now we can start cutting the fabric. Alright, so I'm finished cutting my big pattern pieces, and now I will cut all the small details from whatever is left. Now here I need to cut my front pockets, my back pockets, and the waistband as well. For the waistband, I'm going to do some things very special, and we will definitely talk about it at the end of the video. But you can, of course, opt for a very simple casing for elastic and be done with that. It's definitely up to you. Just don't forget that you will need fabric for it. Now for the front pockets, one side is going to be cut from the main fabric, and the other side I'm going to cut from really lightweight cotton. And I will do exactly the same for the back pockets as well. The construction of these pants is really straightforward, and I'm going to start with the front pocket pieces. I'm going to place the white fabric with the main pattern piece of the front pant, and I'm going to transfer the markings that we made on the pattern. Now I'm going to take about 5/8 of an inch in because I left 1/2 inch for my French seam, plus I'm accounting 1/8 of an inch for the turn of the fabric. I will take my pocket and I will place it right sides together on top of the front pattern piece of my pants. I also went ahead and applied a little strip of interfacing on the pants part right where the pocket is going to be opening, so that way it will give it a little bit of extra stability. Now with a straight stitch, we're going to repeat the marking that we made with heat erasable pen on top of my white fabric. Once that is done, slightly cut it out, then clip at the corners all the way up to the stitching but not past it, and then turn the fabric to the wrong side and give it a really good press, so that way we have that beautiful opening for the pocket. Now I will top stitch that about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the opening. Since I decided to use French seams for the construction of these pants, I'm also going to do that on this pocket as well. And as always, when we do French seams, we start by placing our pattern pieces wrong sides together and then completing the seam. If you need a little refresher on how French seams are done, I will leave a link for you guys in the description of this video. Once the pocket bag is done, it's going to look like this. And now I'm ready to proceed to constructing the back pockets and attaching them to the back pattern pieces. Here, everything is really straightforward. You don't have to do what I'm doing, but I decided to line my pockets. Here, the trick is to make sure that the lining is a little bit shorter than the pocket piece itself. And I'm going to start by doing a straight stitch from seam allowance to seam allowance right on the top. Once that is done, I will go ahead and understitch so that way the lining doesn't poke to the outside, again, from seam allowance to seam allowance. Once that is done, I will pull the lining down to match the actual bottom of the pocket. And now we're going to do a straight stitch all the way around, leaving a small opening on the side so that way I could turn the pocket right side out. It's ready to be stitched on top of the back pattern piece, and I'm going to do that with 2 rows of stitching, but of course you can do whatever is best for you. Once both sets of the pockets are done, it's really a smooth sailing from here. We're going to complete a side seam and the inner leg seam first on both the right leg and left leg, and we're going to do that by placing them wrong sides together because of course I'm doing French seams, and I'm going to start at the side seam. Once the first step of the French seam is complete, I will go ahead and trim that bulk that is created by all of those layers of the pocket, so that way when I'm done with the second step of the French seam, it's not going to create a lot of thickness in that area. But be very careful not to clip more than absolutely necessary. Pressing my French seams between the steps really helps me to get that nice and crisp result. And here's an extra tip. After my side seam is done completely, and depending on the pattern and the type of pants that I'm working with, I sometimes press my hem right away as the next step. That way it's easier to do it when your pant leg is flat instead of when both of the seams are sewn and doing it in the round. And of course after that I'm going to be completing my inner leg seam with the French seam method as well. After constructing both the right and the left leg, we only have a couple of things to do. And here I'm going to do a leg and leg method. So I'm going to place one leg inside of another one, and I will align my crotch and complete it with a flat felt seam. If you feel that these steps were a little bit too fast for you, then I do have a full series on how to sew pants step by step, including how to cut the pattern on grain and all of the things that you will need to know, and I will leave that playlist for you underneath this video. The hem here is about 1.5 inches wide and completed with a blind hem stitch on the sewing machine. Now I only have the waistband, and that's it, the pants will be ready. Now I am preparing for you a very detailed tutorial on how to complete this exact waistband step by step with all of the measurements that you will need. So that is coming in about 1.5 weeks or so. If you are a member of this channel, then you do have this tutorial available for you as an early access. And if not, then go ahead and subscribe so that way you don't miss this tutorial. And right now, let's go ahead and take a look at how the pants turned out. Now here I wanted to show you the details of the pants and also how truly versatile they can be. I styled it with the white linen shirt, and as you can tell, I made the shirt myself. I haven't finished the buttons just yet, but I wanted to show you that you can really dress it up with a nice shirt like that. or you can really dress it down with a more casual t-shirt. So you can really play around with the style of the pants. They're really comfortable, and I truly hope that this video gave you some ideas and inspired you. Now in this next episode, we're going to make a couple of tops that would go perfectly with the pair of pants that we just made. So let's watch. Here we see the always popular peasant top, and as you know, they come back every spring and every summer, and this variation has a square-like neckline and gathers everywhere. We see gathers at the top of the bodice, at the sleeve, and on the bottom of the garment as well, which makes it really easy and really effortless to wear. Fabric-wise, I have a couple of interesting choices here from my fabric stash, and you can use both knits and wovens, and I actually want to create this top particularly for these pants that we made in the last So Easy episode. And by the way, I've gotten so many compliments on these, and somebody even took a picture in the store when I was wearing these. So yeah, these are definitely a winner. So comfortable, and I want to make a top that will create sort of like a no-brainer ensemble, sort of like a summer uniform for the entire season. Now here are a couple of things that I really want to mention. Number one, it really is simple and straightforward, and probably a lot simpler than it seems initially. And number two, there are many ways how you can achieve this look, and the most obvious of them would be to use a raglan sleeve pattern and modify that and go from there. So if you have one, feel free to use it. Then of course you can use your bodice block of woven or knit variety depending on what fabric you're using, what style you're going for. And then there's this way, which is by using a simple traced t-shirt. So if you haven't traced your t-shirt yet, then I do have a full video tutorial on how to do it, and that's how I do it, and it gives a really good result. And this t-shirt is the one that I'm actually wearing on me, so it makes it easy because you see the visual right in front of you. And note that this t-shirt isn't super oversized, it's not boxy, it doesn't have a drop shoulder, and it doesn't have too much room. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your own base. Now first, I'm going to trace my front and back with a sleeve, just like you see me do on your screens. Now here's a really important moment. So I've actually decided that I'm going to be using these two fabrics for my top. So this is a really beautiful yellow. I think it's going to go really well with this green. And this is cotton lycra jersey knit. And this is just cotton knit. So both of these fabrics are knits and they both stretch. And that's why I'm using a stretchy garment like t-shirt as a base for this project and for these pattern adjustments. And of course, yes, you can use your knit bodice block for this as well. In fact, that's what I would usually use for pattern adjustments and future ideas and pattern drafting and whatnot. I just thought that let's start with the t-shirt this time because it's a lot easier to get started with a traced t-shirt than with a knit bodice block. So I truly hope that this will give you that courage, that little creative push to make your own patterns and to create beautiful clothes. First, to create a square-like neckline for my top, I'm going to take about 3/4 of an inch away from each shoulder and mark those points on the front and on the back. Then I'm going to determine how deep I want my neckline, and therefore I've decided to lower my neckline by about 1 inch in the front and the same amount in the back as well. Once I have those points, I'm going to square lines from them, and that is going to create a new front and back neckline. Here I want to create a straight side seam, so I will take a straight line down from the bottom of the armhole, and I will be adding quite a bit of ease a little bit later to this bodice, so I'm not really worried that we are sort of chopping some of it off as of this very moment. Next, I'm going to lower the armhole by about 1 inch, and as always, we're repeating this on the front and on the back pattern piece as well. Now I'm going to connect this new point with the neckline. I could leave it as is as a straight line, but I decided to curve it in just by a tad bit, and this is not going to change much, just going to look nicer in my opinion. And at this point, I think we can see that this whole pattern is starting to take shape. To determine the length, I just measure down the center front from the neckline all the way down, and then I mark that on the pattern. I have outlined the new pattern in blue so we can see a little bit better, and now I will cut these apart. So here, before I cut off the sleeve, I will actually copy the curved line by folding it in half, and this will ensure that these pattern pieces match when we're ready to assemble them. Now I'm going to separate the sleeve from the bodice, and here I just want to make sure that I mark my pattern pieces, the fold placement, direction of the stretch, and of course which pattern piece is which, meaning the front and the back. So for the sleeve, we're actually going to be using a slash and spread method, which we use quite a bit on the channel. And with that method alone, you can really create some amazing pattern drafts and really fun garments. Let's get started with marking the slash lines first. Here I'm only working with the top part of the sleeve since I don't want to touch and distort the armhole curves of the sleeves, which are then going to be aligned and attached to the bodice. Each of my slash and spread lines are just about 3/4 of an inch apart, and I'm just doing this approximately. Once I have cut all of these apart, I place them on a piece of scrap paper so that way I can tape everything down a little bit later, and then I spread each of these segments also just about 3/4 of an inch apart, which in total is going to give me about 6 inches of ease in my sleeve. Here you can see that the top of the sleeve now looks all sorts of jagged, so I'm just going to tidy it up by creating a really nice smooth curved line on the top. And once that is done, now we have the front pattern piece, the back pattern piece, and the sleeve. And we are ready to move on to cutting the pattern pieces out of fabric. As I still need to add ease to the bodice, you see me do it here right on the fabric. So I placed my pattern about 3 inches away from the folded edge of the fabric, which will give me 6 inches in total of ease in my front and in my back bodice. As always, I don't add any seam allowances in the patterns that I draft, so I have to add them as I cut my fabric. The only regular seam allowance is going to be on the curve of the sleeve, that is going to be on the front and the back pattern piece, and of course on the sleeve. All of the other seam allowances are going to be equal of the width of my elastic. Here's another thing to remember. All of the edges where we're going to be attaching elastic, we're going to be folding it in like a facing. So don't forget to cut your seam allowances like that. Now, doing this on a curve of the sleeve cap is quite fiddly just because it's a curve, but it is quite a smooth one and the fabric is stretchy. So you know what? I'm just gonna make it work. The sewing part itself is really easy, and a top like this will come together super nicely on a sewing machine, but I'm actually in a pickle because as of right now my sewing machine is in service, so I'm left with a serger and a cover stitch machine. So I will do my best to complete these tops on those two machines. So anywhere where you will see a serger or a cover stitch machine, just go ahead and substitute it for a zigzag stitch, a triple step zigzag stitch, or perhaps a twin needle if you would like to. Step number 1 here is attaching the elastic. Now I have cut my elastic the same width as all of the original pattern pieces before adding any ease. Now, placing elastic on the wrong side of the fabric, aligned with the edge of it, I'm going to sew it on. And sometimes sewing elastic down, especially when you really have to stretch it, can be a little bit tricky, especially when you get to the very end of the elastic. So let me share with you a neat little thing, super simple, what I do in order to sort of make it easier and the end result nicer. I will fold the elastic down and top stitch it with a cover stitch machine, stretching it flat as I go. And I will repeat these steps on all pattern pieces that make up the neckline. Once that is done, I just need to put this together like any other raglan sleeve top. But I will go ahead and baste it first because I want to try it on, and if necessary, make final adjustments before I sew it all together. And here, yes, I did try it on and it was just a tad bit too loose to my taste. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to adjust all pattern pieces just by about 1/2 inch, and that will do the trick. So for the elastic on the hem of the sleeves and on the bottom of the top, I don't want those two to be tight, because what happens in summertime, you get really hot and it just starts rubbing. So I really want some room, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a measuring tape or elastic, whichever one you have, and I'm just going to measure how wide I want those openings to be. And then of course I will need to make sure that whatever is the length of the elastic that I cut, that I can actually stretch it in order to be able to gather all of that hem of the sleeve and on the bottom as well. While I'm getting this done, I really wanted to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to the members of the channel. Thank you so much for your support, and make sure that you check out members perks that are available as a part of your membership. Almost every week there is a new members extra video. There are sneak peeks of the upcoming project, of course some downloadable material on Google Drive as well. So definitely check out your members perks, and thank you so much for your support. All right, this is the final stretch. Here I need to tuck in all serger tails, and as always, all detailed tutorials for sewing techniques, for drafting techniques, and how to put together a raglan sleeve shirt you will find on my channel. And I also want to stitch down the seam allowance right here at the neckline, so that way it's nice and flat, and I'm going to do that by hand. Now in shirts and blouses like that, even if you made it yourself, sometimes it's really hard to identify where's the front and where's the back. So here's a little label I received as a gift from a sewing friend, so it's gonna go on as well. And once done, here's the final reveal. Now, making a hoodie might not sound exciting, but it can be if you use 2 different colors or a really fun print. Plus, it's really easy to make. We're going to take a look at this hoodie first, and then we're going to move on to making this one. So here we have a sleeve, a cuff, a hoodie lined, and also high-low hem, and it's all made from a lovely French terry. This was actually a gift from a sewing friend, so it's extra special. So as I mentioned, it's going to look very much like this, but not quite. So I have prepared a sketch for us, so that way we can understand the concept and sort of have a vision in our head. And of course I have prepared a choice of fabrics as well. So without any further ado, let's go and dive in. As you know, the entire premise of Sew Easy series on my channel is about taking bits of knowledge that we already have and then putting them together and creating something useful, beautiful, creative for our own sewing and for our own wardrobe. So that's exactly what we're doing today. And it might seem like a garment that you've never seen on my channel, but in fact, all of the puzzle pieces that we're going to be using today, we already done time and time again. So the body is just a relaxed fit sweatshirt or a sweater or a jumper, or you can even take a t-shirt and modify that. Now I will be using a sweater adjustment from my knit bodice block series. It was in first episode, but you can of course do a drop shoulder. You can use a pattern that you already have and you know that you love it. You can draft a dolman sleeve, you can draft a grown-on sleeve, and I know I don't have to tell you this and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but all of these tutorials you can find on my channel, including the tutorial for the hood. And from here, I actually want to make this hoodie into a two-tone design. So here I have some cotton French terry, some ribbing, some other fabrics, and as you can tell, I'm really into combining these earth tones, browns and beiges. I really want to play with these color combinations. So the idea is to color block the sleeve and the hem of the hoodie. Now I know I've pulled quite a lot of fabrics here from my fabric stash, but I'm immediately drawn to the combination of these two It might seem a little bit like plain vanilla, but that's the point, and nothing wrong with plain vanilla. But I think that the combination of these two is gonna go so well with a lot of things that I have in my wardrobe, and I really want that functionality. And I already have a beautiful floral hoodie, so this is going to be great. But you can of course do a combination of a variety of things. Just, you know, let your creativity loose. And before we move forward onto the patterns, let me tell you where I got this fabric, because so many of you asked me where I got this French terry when I did my video about 3 methods of sewing pants. So I'm letting you know, this French terry was from Serge Fabric Shop. These two were as well. Not sponsored at all. As you know, if it was, I would let you know. But that's where I got it. That was my first time shopping at that shop. So I will leave the link for you guys in the info box below. Go check them out and see what you like. So now let's go ahead and talk about the pattern. So as I mentioned, for the bodice and the sleeve, I'm going to be using a knit bodice block adjustment into a sweater. Now for the hood, I already have a pattern. I just need to make sure that I adjust that pattern for the neckline. And after that, I just have to figure out how I want to color block those sleeves and the hem, and that's about it. So let's take a look. First, let's go ahead and start with the bodice. Here's the front, here's the back. So let's go ahead and do a couple of little adjustments. First, I want to widen the neckline just by about 1/4 of an inch, both on the front and on the back. Now I would like to create a slightly larger armhole, so I'm going to lower it by about 1/2 inch, and also because here I do have a little curve that goes over the hip, I actually want to create a straight side seam. So I'm going to lower my armhole just by about 1/2 inch or so. 1/2 inch is right over here, and then I'm going to extend it by, let's see, there we go. I can just take a straight line. Let's just give myself a little bit of room over here. So a straight line like this, and that is gonna give me about 1/4 of an inch extra here on the side seam. So lowered the armhole here, extended the side seam. I'm going to fold it in half and copy that onto my back pattern piece, so that way they match and align. And now I just have to slightly adjust my armholes and extend them to that side seam, and I'll repeat both for the front and the back. And here on the bottom, I think that's exactly where my pattern is going to end, because the hem is going to be in a different color. So I'm going to leave it like that for right now. So for the sleeve here, I also want to do just a couple very simple adjustments. And first, this sleeve was perfect for the blue armhole for the original one. But obviously, we have lowered the armhole and then extended it. So here, what I also want to do is, because it's a hoodie and it's a relaxed fit, I think I'm going to lower the cap height just by about 1/2 inch, would be right over here. And then I will extend it by 1/2 inch. Here. I'm also going to do exactly the same thing on the other side as well. And now I'm going to take my adjusted pattern. This is the front, and this also is the front of the sleeve. I'm going to layer the armhole with the sleeve, and I'm just going to outline this little dip of the curve right over here, and this is where my notch is gonna go. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back pattern piece as well. All right, we're almost there. Now I want to create the new cap of the sleeve. There we go. And I will again measure the sleeve and compare it against the armhole just to make sure that this is big enough for that. So I measured, and I need about 1/2 inch extra in my sleeve in total. So I'm going to do a very simple thing over here. Instead of redrafting everything and doing all those steps, I'm just going to do a slash and spread, and I'm going to do 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here, which will give me 1/2 inch right in the middle of the sleeve. There we go. And the final adjustment that I want to do is I actually want to create a straight sleeve because I want a little bit of gathers here when it goes into a cuff. So from this new point of this sleeve, I'm actually going to take a straight line down all the way to the hem. And then I'm going to extend the hem to meet this line. Body is done, sleeve is done. Now let's talk about the hood. I will be doing a 3-piece hood. Now a tutorial about drafting and sewing a 3-piece hood is coming very, very soon. But for right now, if you'd like, you can use the other 2 hood tutorials that I already have on the channel. And now I just need to make sure that this line right over here fits into my neckline. Now this one is a little bit longer than my neckline, but you know what? This actually plays into my advantage because I want to create a little crisscross overlap at the center front of my hoodie. So this is perfect. So now I just have to create that color block curved hem. And here I was thinking for a while and looking at it, and I also decided to extend the bodice by about 2 inches. Now the curved hem itself is pretty straightforward and it will overlap at the side seam, so it's a little bit longer than each of the front or back pattern pieces. And here I also wanted to add that, of course, this is how I go about pattern drafting and pattern adjustments, but there are so many other ways and techniques. So as always, use what's right for you and what works for you. And for the sleeve, I decided to split the colors at about 6 inches above the hem. All right, pattern done, so let's cut it out. So now I know that I only have the sleeves and the bodice cut out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste the whole sleeve together right away, and then I'm going to start by assembling the side seams, the shoulder seams, and putting in the sleeve, because I need to know how this is going to look before I've cut all of the pattern pieces, because if the sleeve looks a little bit disproportionate, I can still try to fix that, and with that I might need to adjust the hem as well. So of course I'm not cutting it just yet because I need to know how it actually plays out in real life, not just on the paper in a sketch. So the body is sort of done, so I'm going to baste in the sleeve, and it's going to be a make it or break it moment. So, okay. I was debating if to show it to you or not, because for right now it doesn't look impressive, or it doesn't look like it's going to turn out nice, but I have the vision in my head. So far I like where it goes. I do have to adjust the length over here because I did lengthen it by 2 inches and I shouldn't have. So I might need to cut it off, but I think the proportions are good, and obviously the sleeve is not gonna go like this. It's actually going to have a cuff. So let's get back to sewing. Let's put it all together, and I hope it works out. A quick reminder here that all of the techniques that you see, like for example sewing in the sleeve and adding the cuff, you will find on my channel and in the info box right underneath this video. You know, I'm just about to finish these sleeves, and I'm happy to tell you that it's shaping up. It really is. I know it doesn't look like much just yet, or it doesn't look like the final idea that I was going for, but I think we will get there. And you know, this whole situation kind of got me thinking about how often do we actually give up on a project halfway through, midway, you know, before it even has a chance to shape up, and all because it doesn't really look like the final idea just yet. And I've definitely been there. I've been there. But I can also tell you that if we don't take it till the finish line, we will never know if it ever had a chance to become what we had initially envisioned. So sometimes it does take a little bit of persistence to take all that, I would say, fear and disbelief and maybe even anxiety, and just sort of like shove them in the corner, tell them to stay there. So if you need a little bit of a pep talk, I'm here to tell you that, you know, sometimes it's worth pushing through, even if it doesn't come out at the end, because otherwise we will never know, right? And if you do have, you know, a story or personal experience that you would like to share with us about, you know, pushing through in a project when halfway through it didn't look as enticing or it didn't look believable, then let us know in the comments below. I know a lot of people could, you know, really use a different perspective perhaps, or somebody else also experiencing the same thing. So if you'd like to share, let us know in the comments. I would love to read as well. Alright, I have cut out my pattern pieces for the hood. As you can see, I have 2 pattern pieces over here from the main fabric, 2 pattern pieces from the lining, and 2 pattern pieces, each one on the fold of the middle part. But as you can see, the lining piece is smaller than the piece cut from the main fabric, and that is because I decided that I want to do a cut on facing. So if I place my pattern piece like this, you can see that it's definitely a lot larger over here. So I've decided that I want to do a facing that I can cut all in one piece in here on the bottom. I've aligned it as well. So if I leave it like that, and if I take my lining and if I place it on top, you will see that now it forms a perfect little hood with a facing that is cut all as one piece. Now, I usually don't do drawstrings in my hoods. I'm not sure why, I just don't. But I have this one. It's actually from my mom, and it's a little sparkly. And I think it's actually going to go really well with my project. So I thought, why not? And here you can see I've tested a couple of options for the opening for this drawstring, and I've settled on a simple buttonhole. So once my hood is done, I'm going to attach it to the bodice by aligning the notches at the shoulders and at the center back, and of course overlapping the hood in the middle. The last step is the hem, and it's super easy here. I have cut them out and I've also hemmed them right away, and I will attach them in the round, overlapping at the side seams. But you can see here there's a large hem allowance on the bodice, and that's because those are those 2 inches that I've added, and now I have to cut them off before I attach the hem. Well, there it is. I think it turned out really nice. If I may say so myself, I do love this color combination. I do love how the sleeves and the hem turned out, and the hood as well. It's sort of plain, but at the same time it has a little bit of interest. Let me show you how it looks from a couple of different angles. It's comfy. I'm really happy about the color of the hood as well, and the neckline on the inside is completely closed off. So if you want to know how to finish your knit necklines in the most neat way possible, I share with you 4 ways that I do it, with a ton of real life examples of hoodies and t-shirts and whatnot. So take a look right over here. Thank you so much for watching. Push through your project, believe in yourself, and until next time, happy sewing. Bye!